A major liberal journalist acknowledges that actually the reason he didn't say the truth about trans was, in fact, social pressure. Also, Democrats are now claiming that there's no free speech crisis in the UK, but there is in the United States. And the president of the United States doing something really, really smart about crime in New Orleans. First, as you know, this year, we're celebrating a decade of the Daily Wire, not by looking back, but by launching What's Next. First up, on Monday, for the first time in years, we are bringing in brand new Daily Wire talent with the premiere of The Isabel Brown Show. Then, next Wednesday night, the main event, Friendly Fire. All of us getting together to do what friends do. Argue, debate, probably smoke a few Mayflower cigars. Don't miss the premiere, because inside Friendly Fire is where we're dropping the good stuff. New series, new projects, huge announcements, surprises we've been holding back until this very moment. This is the start of our next decade. You don't want to miss a single moment. Join us now at dailywire.com. Alrighty, folks, so we've known for a very long time in this country, for years and years and years, that if you said the wrong thing about the trans issue, you could be canceled. But now, finally, there's some people who are heretofore on the left who are acknowledging that that is, in fact, the case. And this is just one of the beautiful flowering fruit of the Trump administration, is that people are free to say things they didn't feel free to say before. And you can easily read this kind of newfound enthusiasm for free speech as cynical. The winds have changed. People are now deciding that they want to say what is more popular, or you can read it as repentance. The reason this comes up today is because Malcolm Gladwell, who, of course, is a very famous best-selling author, he's been a guest on the program before. I've been a guest on his program as well. He came out yesterday, and he explained his amended point of view on transgender athletes, meaning men playing against women in sports. And he was talking specifically about a 2022 appearance at the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, where he moderated a panel discussion in which they talked about the path forward for the inclusion of trans athletes in sports, meaning men playing with the women. And here's what Malcolm Gladwell had to say yesterday.
The reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel, because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed. The idea of saying anything on this issue, I was I believe in retrospect, in a dishonest way. I was objective in a dishonest.
And of course, that is right. That is honest. There are many people who were cowed. There were many people who were so scared of saying what was obviously true that they didn't say it. And this happens all the time in our politics. It happened in Great Britain during the Rotherham scandal, when members of the media specifically decided not to cover the fact that there were Muslim gangs, Muslim men, taxi drivers largely, who were underage white girls, forced and then passing them around. And people in the media knew about this, and they decided not to say anything, because to say something would have resulted in censure, in public opprobrium, in people in power suggesting that you were somehow in league with the right. And in league with the right for a very long time in this country, in the UK as well, has become sort of the code for must be thrown out of public life. Now, listen, I don't believe that every view is equivalent. I'm not a moral relativist. I don't believe that we should take every view with equal seriousness. I do think that there is an Overton window, meaning the arena of valuable discussion. The problem is that the left shut the Overton window so much that if you just disagreed with the left on very fundamentally true principles like men are not women, they would throw you out. And so the question becomes for many members of the right, what do you do when Malcolm Gladwell says something like this? What do you do? And the answer is that you probably should offer forgiveness. You probably should offer some form of generosity. Michael Schellenberger wrote on X, like him or not, Malcolm Gladwell is one of the most influential and financially successful journalists of the last 30 years. For him to say he was too scared to say men don't belong in girls' sports shows both how totalitarian the mainstream media is and how chicken bleep MSM journalists are. Now, again, I think that it isn't really about being cowardly, although you can make the argument. I think what it really is more about is the insane echo chamber that has been created in so many of our elite spaces. Because the reality is, if you said what Malcolm Gladwell now says he would say, in 85% of the country, you'd be totally fine. In fact, it is the mainstream view. But if you are in the elite circles in which Malcolm Gladwell traveled, you would, in fact, lose your social standing. You may have lost your job. Places would stop reviewing your books. There is real risk attached. And President Trump has opened that up wide. And that is a credit, of course, to President Trump. It's also a credit to the American people. It's a credit to the American people because the American people made the decision they didn't want to do this anymore, that they were done with all of this. Well, you know where they're not done with all of this, as I mentioned, is in Britain. So yesterday, there was a free speech hearing on the Hill. Nigel Farage appeared. He, of course, is the head of the Reform Party in the UK. And this hearing, which was designed to expose the predations of the UK and much of Europe with regard to free speech, held before the House Judiciary Committee, steered into what's going on in the UK. And here is Nigel Farage testifying.
I'm delighted to reacquaint with the charming Mr. Raskin. That was delightful testimony you gave me earlier on with your speech. But hey, that's fine. You can say what you like. I don't care. Because that's what free speech is. And in a sense, this has all been going wrong now for a couple of decades. We've kind of forgotten the Voltairean principles that we'll fight and defend to the death your right to say something that we fundamentally disagree with.
Okay, and that, of course, used to be the way that the West did things. But as we've been finding, that's not the case in the UK, where there's actually enshrined in government policy. And I think Americans really do need to understand that, yes, there's been cancel culture. And cancel culture, when inappropriately applied, when applied to a range of mainstream views, is ridiculous and bad. But that is a difference in kind from what is happening in the UK, where the government is literally arresting people for bad tweets. That happens also in Canada, obviously. And the thing that prevents that from happening in the United States is not our magical adherence to First Amendment principles as a people. Unfortunately, there are many, many people in the United States who, if they had the opportunity, would in fact vote to curb free speech. If you look at the polls of young people overwhelmingly believe that hate speech should trump free speech, so to speak. By all the polls, young people believe that there should in fact be legal limits on the kinds of speech that you should be allowed to say out loud. The thing that protects us is the structures of the Constitution. It is the fact that the Constitution bars Congress from doing this thing, and that the Supreme Court has made very clear its stance for decades that free speech must be protected at the highest possible level. This is why it's kind of ridiculous when you hear people like Jamie Raskin arguing that actually there is no free speech crisis in the UK. The real free speech crisis is happening thanks to Donald Trump, according to Jamie Raskin, the congressman from Maryland.
There is a free speech crisis in America today, but there's no free speech crisis in Britain. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has not shut down GB News, where Mr. Farage has his own show, just because Mr. Farage has used his airtime to call for banning peaceful protests that he disagrees with. No one has stopped him from going on Russian TV 17 times and saying also and repeating that the one world political leader he most admired was Vladimir Putin, even though Vladimir Putin is a war criminal.
Okay, what exactly is the contradiction between what Raskin is saying and the reality, which is that people are in fact being arrested for tweets in the UK? And when Raskin says that the free speech crisis is happening in America because he doesn't like President Trump, or the stuff President Trump says, or the lawsuits that President Trump files, which are then adjudicated in court and settled sometimes. Again, a difference in kind. But the left in the United States has sort of reversed reality. Somehow the UK is a free speech bastion, and somehow the real authoritarianism is happening right here in the United States. So Jimmy Raskin also made the argument that Donald Trump firing bureaucrats makes him like Stalin.
Honorable civil servants are being fired because they won't be the political hacks Trump demands that they be. When private comments made by federal employees are scrutinized for anti-Trump bias and they can lose their jobs because of it, then we've entered the realm not just of Vladimir Putin, but of Joseph Stalin.
Okay, Joseph Stalin. I mean, is anyone getting executed precisely? I mean, there is the idea that members of the executive branch should work for, the head of the executive branch. But this is the game that the left in the United States is playing. Crackdowns on free speech abroad are not happening. The real crackdowns on free speech are not, in fact, crackdowns on free speech at all inside the United States. Already coming up, China, Russia getting very aggressive, plus very weird hot mic moment between some of the world's worst dictators. First, when inflation jumps, when you hear the national debt is over $37 trillion, you ever think, well, maybe now would be a good time to buy some gold? Well, I've thought that, and I have, in fact, bought significant amounts of gold over the course of the last few months. Whether to protect against the dollar's loss in purchasing power, for peace of mind during global instability, or just for a sensible diversification, Birch Gold Group believes every American should own physical gold. And so along with the Daily Wire, Birch Gold created something special this month. Through September 30th, if you buy from Birch Gold, you will get a signed copy of my brand new book, Lions and Scavengers, plus your very own golden Ben Shapiro bookmark. Ooh, that sounds cool, actually. We released an extremely limited quantity of the autographed books and bookmarks, so text Ben to 989898, claim your eligibility, and start the process. Plus, Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. You're still eligible for a signed copy of Lions and Scavengers. I buy my gold from Birch Gold. Is it finally time for you to pull the trigger on that? It's very easy. You give them a call. They walk you through the process. Text my name, Ben, to 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Act before September 30th. Again, text Ben to 989898. Also, do you find yourself tossing and turning all night, flipping that pillow to find the cool side? If you or your partner are hot sleepers, summer nights can become a battle between exhaustion and overheating. Too hot, too cold, too hot, too cold, never quite right. Well, you need that cool, comfortable sleep you deserve, and Bolt and Branch can make that happen for you with their best-selling Percale sheets. You'll finally get the cool sleep you've been craving. These aren't just any ordinary sheets. They are crafted with a special cooling weave using the finest 100% organic cotton. Feels crisp and breathable against your skin. Even if you're the sweatiest sleeper in the house, you will stay comfortably cool all night long. Here's the best part. You can try them risk-free with their 30-night guarantee. No matter your bedroom style or mattress size, Boll & Branch has designs and colors to match perfectly. These all-season sheets start with breathable, unmatched softness that only gets better with every single wash. Now, look at me. Am I at home? I am not. But one thing I brought from home. You know what it is. It's that throw blanket from Boll & Branch. It is so good, I literally bring it on the road with me everywhere. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep can make with Boll & Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/Ben. That's Boll & Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Ben to save 15% and unlock free shipping. Exclusions apply. Now, there is a sort of bizarre gray area that exists in American law. That bizarre gray area exists in the realm of anti-discrimination law. And we should actually discuss this because it's kind of important. So yesterday, there was a ruling that came out from a federal court striking down the ability of the Trump administration to reject $2.2 billion in research funding from Harvard University. The ruling was by a U.S. district judge named Allison Burroughs of Massachusetts. And it came, according to the Wall Street Journal, as Harvard and the Trump administration have been in talks to resolve months of the government's pressure tactics over what it calls anti-Semitism and diversity-related concerns. President Trump said last month he wants no less than $500 million from Harvard. The White House said, quote, "To any fair-minded observer, it is clear that Harvard University failed to protect their students from harassment and allowed discrimination to plague their campus for years. We are confident we will ultimately prevail in our efforts to hold Harvard accountable." In her ruling, the judge concluded that Harvard was wrong to tolerate hateful behavior for as long as it did, but argued that the federal government, quote, "used anti-Semitism as a smokescreen for a targeted, ideologically motivated assault on this country's premier universities," and then argued that the government's actions violated the First Amendment. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening here. There is a principled case to be made, a principled libertarian case to be made, that anti-discrimination law, when applied to private universities, for example, is violative of free speech principles. That things that you are allowed to say without being prosecuted are also things that should be allowed to be said at businesses without that business being prosecuted under, say, the Civil Rights Act. There's a principled First Amendment libertarian take that says that this part of the Civil Rights Revolution went too far and impinged on freedom of speech principles. That is not the argument this judge is making. The argument this judge is making is that certain types of discrimination are basically okay. That anti-Jewish discrimination at these various universities, that's okay. If it were anti-black discrimination, then the Trump administration could remove funding. But if it's anti-Jewish discrimination, then the Trump administration has no right to do that. That is ridiculous, and it speaks again to the left's double standard when it comes to pretty much every aspect of American law, from free speech and cancel culture to anti-discrimination law, which is only supposed to apply to some, but not apply to others. In her order, the judge stressed the importance of fighting anti-Semitism, but then cautioned, quote, "If speech can be curtailed in the name of the Jewish people today, then just as easily the speech of the Jews and anyone else can be curtailed when the political winds change direction." Again, that is a principled libertarian argument she would not make if we were talking about anti-black discrimination on college campuses. If you want to make the sort of Reason Magazine argument that anti-discrimination law runs afoul of First Amendment principles, I'm actually quite open to that argument. If you are making a different argument, which is that only certain groups get protected by anti-discrimination law, that is a very, very different thing. And it is that double standard that very double standard the left is applying that makes people believe, I think correctly, that they don't actually care about any sort of consistent free speech principles, that they are not making any sort of argument that coheres. And this is why the great fear is that if the left ever gained power for a significant period of time in this country and was able to take over the Supreme Court, that you would have serious restrictions on speech that look a lot more like what the UK is doing, not just the sort of informal social cancel culture stuff that we've been seeing in the United States. Okay, meanwhile, on the foreign front, yesterday, China held a massive military parade. Obviously, this was designed as an intimidation tactic against President Trump. I do not think it is going to work. According to the Wall Street Journal, China flexed its growing military power and its deepening ties to Washington's adversaries with an extravagant parade that cast leader Xi Jinping as the standard bearer of a new global order. The armed forces spectacle in Beijing on Wednesday, marking the 80th anniversary of China's victory in World War II, projected the vision of a great power that Xi wants to present to the world and a warning to the U.S. and Europe not to challenge it. First of all, I should just note, historically speaking, it was not the Communist Party of China that won the war against Japan. It was Chiang Kai-shek who won the war against Japan. Mao basically did nothing. He sat up in the mountains, waited for Chiang Kai-shek to do the dirty work, and then came down from the mountains and took over the country and turned it into a communist bastion. In any case, others who attended this kind of glorified spectacle included North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, as well as Russia's Vladimir Putin. Now, the weapons that were included in this particular march included what are called the weapons of the nuclear triad. The nuclear triad, those are weapons that are land-based, submarine-based, and air-based. And all those weapons were made available here. So the goal, obviously, was to intimidate the United States, to say that while the U.S. has certain defensive mechanisms, if China were to go to war with the United States, hell, they might nuke San Francisco or something. According to the Wall Street Journal, she was flanked by leaders from 26 countries, including Iran, of course. He said in a speech, quote, "The Chinese people have made major contributions in saving human civilization and safeguarding world peace with huge national sacrifices." I'm going to ask when. I'm just going to ask when. Again, the Chinese people may have done so during World War II against the Japanese, but not the Chinese government that is represented by the communists. "The great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is unstoppable," said Xi. And then again, they showed hypersonic, nuclear-capable missiles and unmanned combat platforms that strengthen China's abilities to deter the United States and project power far beyond its borders. Formations on parade included ground, naval, and aerial drones, strategic missiles, and a cyberspace combat force. So part of this was domestically oriented. It was intended to demonstrate to the Chinese people that despite the sort of wavering economic growth in China, serious demographic problems in China, massive debt bomb in China, that they still have the military capacity to challenge the United States. It is also a signal to the United States, an attempt to get President Trump to back down from his tariff threats against China. Well, Beijing is taking advantage of the tariff wars in order to achieve a broader appeal to neutral and third-party countries. This is what's been going on with China and India. China is trying to make overtures to India, counting on alienation by the United States of India on the tariff front in order to make overtures to India. They're doing the same thing with South Korea. They're doing the same thing with other countries in the region, Vietnam. According to the Wall Street Journal, unlike past military parades held when China's economy was humming, the event comes as Beijing confronts serious challenges, including high youth unemployment, mounting debt levels, and a years-long property bust. Also, she has been purging his senior military commanders because he is afraid of the possibility that somebody tries to make a change over there. Now, I think what this really says to the United States, and it should be a reminder, China is not nearly as strong as it seems to believe that it is, or seems to be trying to show the world that it is. Again, China has serious internal problems. Doesn't mean that China isn't a serious geopolitical threat. They are. It does mean that if the power of the American free market and innovation is unlocked, if China is, instead of engaged, boxed in, if we decide to build a ring of commerce around China, if we decide to protect allies like Taiwan and Japan and South Korea, and yes, India, from the predations of the Chinese, then China could find itself on the wrong side here. And Russia's not going to bail them out because Russia does not have the capacity to do that. Russia has nuclear weapons and gas, and that is it. But I think the goal for Putin and Xi is to show a strong face, in an attempt to get President Trump to broker some sort of friendly deal with Russia over Ukraine and that drain on Russia's military might in time to save Vladimir Putin's regime, possibly. Back off the harsh economic measures that we've aimed at the Chinese. That seems to be the goal. Well, Vladimir Putin, for his part, he says that Zelensky should now come to Moscow. He's doing that simultaneously with launching 500 drones and missiles at Kyiv overnight, wrecking energy and civilian infrastructure. Putin apparently claimed he never refused a meeting with Zelensky, which of course is not true. Putin basically just let that proposal by President Trump die. Putin told his state-owned outlet, TASS, quote, if Zelensky is ready for a meeting, let him come to Moscow. Of course, Zelensky isn't going to do that because he's afraid that Putin will, of course, kill him. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Syevha slammed Putin's proposal for Zelensky to willingly enter enemy territory as the war rages as unacceptable. He says there are lots of places they could do this. They're not doing it in Moscow. Syevha said, quote, there are serious proposals, and President Zelensky is ready for such a meeting at any point in time, but Putin continues to mess around. And then he added, only pressure can force Russia to finally get serious about the peace process. And this is right. Okay, this is where we should be taking a note from the Reagan playbook. Truly, Ronald Reagan understood. Box in the Soviets and then outcompete them. That is the exact same method we should be using with regard to China. We can outcompete the Chinese. We need to unleash the American economy, radical deregulation, lower taxes, ease of investment, lower tariffs, better trade relationships with our partners. If you want to defeat China, these are the ways that you defeat China. Meanwhile, I got to say, the coalition of enemies that is allying against the United States is totally, bizarrely Orwellian. It's like something out of a Bond film. Putin, Xi, and Kim were caught on a hot mic, actually, talking about living forever, which is just the most Orwellian crap I ever heard. Xi is speaking Mandarin. He's 70 years old. And the translator says, earlier people rarely lived to 70. These days at 70, you are still a child, is what Putin said. It's inaudible what he's saying. The translator is translating back to Xi, says, with the development of biotechnology, organs can be transplanted, people can live younger and younger and even achieve immortality. And then Xi said, predictions are this century, there's a chance of also living to 150. So here you have all of these relatively elderly dictators. And Kim Jong-un is relatively young, but Putin is in his 70s. Xi Jinping is currently 72. So these are aging dictators who are literally talking about how to basically get organ transplants so they can live forever. These are scary and spiritually devoid people, for sure. And the attempt to somehow turn them into something else is bizarre. The attempt by some to stand for Vladimir Putin as though Vladimir Putin is, a soulful Christian who is deeply invested in biblical values. By what evidence at all? Like truly at all. Vladimir Putin has gotten more Christians killed than any person on earth in the modern era. At least 200,000 Russians and probably 100,000 Ukrainians minimum. And somehow he's the great hero. Okay, if that's what you believe, go for it, sure. President Trump, for his part, responded by saying that the Xi summit was beautiful, but, he should have thanked the United States since it was really the U.S. ending the war against Japan that freed China.
I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive. But I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching. My relationship with all of them is very good. We're going to find out how good it is over the next week or two. I think that we helped China very much, as you know, when they talk about freedom. And I don't believe that, and maybe I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't believe that America, that the United States was acknowledged for helping China to gain its freedom. But perhaps that was just that was a sleight of hand. I mean, I was very surprised. I watched the speech last night. President Xi is a friend of mine, but I thought that the United States should have been mentioned last night during that speech because we helped China very, very much.
And so, again, he's not wrong about all this. The question becomes, what is the best strategy to confront China? And that is going to require a fair bit of thought. Okay. Meanwhile, the president has taken aggressive action against Venezuela's drug traffickers. So according to Marco Rubio, U.S. forces could have stopped the boat that officials say was carrying illegal drugs from Venezuela to the United States on Tuesday, but President Trump instead chose to destroy it, killing the 11 people on board to send a deterrent message to traffickers. So we do have video of what it looked like when the United States basically nuked from orbit what looks like a speedboat with a bunch of cocaine on it. You can see, here's the boat. That thing barely looks like you could take it fishing. And soon it will no longer exist. Yes, that is an expensive weapon that is blowing up the boat completely. For some reason, there are people upset about this. I'm not sure precisely why, I got to be honest with you. Killing Tren de Aragua drug traffickers. That seems like the world is net better off for that. The President of the United States put out a statement. He said, earlier this morning on my orders, U.S. military forces conducted a kinetic strike against positively identified Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists in the Southcom area of responsibility. TDA is a designated foreign terrorist organization operating under the control of Nicolas Maduro, responsible for mass murder, drug trafficking, and acts of violence and terror across the United States and Western Hemisphere. The strike occurred while the terrorists were at sea in international waters transporting illegal narcotics heading to the United States. The strike resulted in 11 terrorists killed in action. No U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. Please let this serve as notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Apparently, according to Rubio, U.S. forces launched a precision strike on the vessel as it traveled through the Caribbean Sea. When asked if they warned the crew, Rubio said that the vessel, like others carrying drugs, posed an immediate threat to the United States and that we had the right to destroy it. Rubio said the president has a right to eliminate immediate threats to the U.S. This president is not a talker, he's a doer, and he's going to do it. The White House spokeswoman Anna Kelly said in a statement, according to the Washington Post, that the strike was, quote, conducted against the operations of a designated terrorist organization and was taken in defense of vital U.S. national interests and in the collective self-defense of other nations. So, again, I see zero problem with this. Nicolas Maduro is very afraid the United States is going to topple his regime. He has mobilized his entire military, basically, again, boxing him in and ensuring that the supply of drugs from which the Maduro regime profits cannot happen via the water. Now that we have shut our southern border, it can't happen that way either. It is cutting off a massive source of revenue to the Maduro regime. So, yeah, again, it is strange to me that some people seem upset with this, but this is a pretty good way of deterring drug traffickers from attempting to smuggle via the water drugs that kill Americans into our country. The Wall Street Journal editorial board points out that the attack is a break from the usual Coast Guard protocol of stopping suspected drug traffickers on the high seas, going aboard for search and seizure, and making arrests for trial at a later date. Venezuelan capos don't follow the Marquess of Queensberry rules. The U.S. doesn't have to refrain from sending them a more convincing kinetic message. In Venezuela, Tren de Aragua and drug trafficking are tools of the dictatorship. Elsewhere in the region, gangs overwhelm weak institutions, even in countries that do want to fight back. And so this is a good way of boxing in Maduro, who Pete Hegseth called a kingpin of a drug narco state, not actually elected. When asked if regime change is the goal, the Secretary of Defense deferred to Mr. Trump, but added, quote, "We're prepared with every asset the American military has." Now, again, I do not believe the United States is about to engage in a full-scale war with Venezuela, but certainly boxing them in militarily is a solid way of allowing for people inside Venezuela to launch some sort of uprising should, in fact, they choose to do so. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State pledged to foster security cooperation and respect Mexico's sovereignty and territory. Rubio kicked off his visit to Mexico and Ecuador, two allies in the Trump administration's war on drugs. He met with the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum at the National Palace in Mexico City. Rubio said, "We've reached a historical level of cooperation." So, again, apparently, Mexican officials are hoping that better cooperation will forestall actual kinetic U.S. action on the Mexican side of the border. Again, that is another excellent side effect of nuking that speedboat of drugs from orbit, is the Mexican government says, well, we don't want SEAL Team 6 deployed on Mexican soil, so maybe we should cooperate in fighting our own drug cartels. So, again, there are certain people, the usual suspects, like Kenneth Roth, formerly of the United Nations, who's just a trash human being, suggesting that Trump ordered a quote-unquote summary execution, but it was a wartime activity undertaken against a terrorist group, period. This is, I think, why so many people voted for President Trump. He is not doing the talking. He is actually doing the doing. And that is a very, very good thing. Already coming up, some of the world's worst dictators talk about immortality, like living forever. Plus, President Trump does something pretty brilliant on crime and an Epstein presser. First, Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of September 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others, that's yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Again, that's gcu.edu. There are a lot of trash universities out there. GCU is the opposite. Go check them out right now. Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable, gcu.edu. Also, it's kind of wild. Well, when we started Daily Wire, we thought the hard part would be creating the awesome content. Turns out, dealing with all the behind-the-scenes stuff, like hiring, HR policies, employee issues, that's the stuff that is super duper time consuming. I know I'm not alone. When you're a business owner, every second of your time is incredibly valuable. So don't waste your energy and risk losing money. Focus on what matters most, running your business with help from Bambee. Here's what makes Bambee different. They give you access to your very own dedicated HR manager at a fraction of what it costs to employ somebody full time. And get this, Bambee costs just $29 a month, whether you have 10, 75, or even 100 employees. If I had Bambee when we were first building the team, would have saved countless hours and headaches. Instead of getting bogged down with paperwork and compliance issues, I could have focused on growing the show and connecting with my audience. With Bambee's HR Autopilot, you'll never have to waste your valuable time getting into the weeds of HR policies, onboarding, terminations. Plus, Bambee is month-to-month, no hidden fees. You can cancel anytime. Right now, get 1 month of Bambee for just $1. Go to Bambee.com, type in Ben Shapiro under podcast to schedule your first call with an HR manager right now. That's 1 month of Bambee for just $1 at BAMBEE.com. Ben Shapiro Podcast. Okay, meanwhile, Trump's enemies on both the Republican and the Democratic side of the aisle have decided that they are going to, again, revivify the Epstein case. Now, we've talked about the Epstein case a lot on the show, like a lot, especially since the FBI DOJ announcement that there were no further prosecutions coming, that there was no foreign intelligence or domestic intelligence operation involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and that essentially there was no there when it came to a broader case to be made. Well, the media and certain political actors have decided to keep this alive despite lack of evidence. Yesterday, that resulted in a press conference held by Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky and Democratic Representative Ro Khanna of California. They've been attempting to collect signatures from House lawmakers to force a vote compelling the DOJ to turn over its Epstein documents, saying that the document releases so far have been insufficient. And the problem that the DOJ has, of course, is that they do not have a history of turning over, for example, grand jury documents to Congress unredacted, because there may be names that are mentioned because Jeffrey Epstein called people on the phone once, and they don't believe that it is in the interest of the DOJ or the American people to simply indict without trial a bunch of people who are never even alleged to have engaged in the kinds of activities people think there is in the quote-unquote Epstein list that doesn't actually exist. Well, this was paired, this sort of Massie and Ro Khanna publicity stunt, this was paired with a presser that was held outside the Capitol building. The presser outside the Capitol building was coordinated with civil rights attorney Gloria Allred. So Gloria Allred is an ambulance chaser of all ambulance chasers. She's almost immediately discrediting to her own clients in the same way that, say, Benjamin Crump is discrediting to his clientele. Well, she is now coming forward, Gloria Allred is, with a bunch of alleged Epstein victims to apparently tell us nothing. So here's the thing. If you have something to say, you probably should say it. You probably should say it. Seriously. So some of the women were granted settlements and have gotten large-scale settlements from banks that were connected to Epstein, like JP Morgan, for example. Some of the women who are alleging victim status were not minors when they were engaging with Epstein. Some of them absolutely are minors. And none of this, of course, is to downplay the tremendous evil of Jeffrey Epstein. If ever anyone deserved not to be breathing the air that we all get to breathe, it is Jeffrey Epstein. The world is a better place for his absence. With that said, the question now is whether there's anything new that is coming out or whether this is just another grandstanding publicity stunt designed to put some sort of unspecified pressure on President Trump. So, according to the Wall Street Journal, Epstein's victims told their story outside the Capitol on Wednesday morning in a press conference organized by Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, seeking to remind Congress of the nature of the disgraced financier's crimes. Again, the question I have is, what exactly is the allegation? What is Trump supposedly covering up here? What is the thing? So, first, the Epstein victims announced that they would be compiling a list. And here's my question. Why not just do it? Seriously. In any case, they decided they would hold a press conference to announce nothing, which is always suspicious to me. When people hold a press conference to announce nothing, it doesn't suggest that there's a lot waiting behind the vault door. Here are some of the Epstein victims talking about this.
And let me announce now, several of us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list of names. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details on that. Because history is watching, and so are the women who will come after us. Thank you.
Well, another Epstein victim recalled going on a trip with Bill Clinton and says that Epstein bragged about President Trump, but didn't make an allegation that Clinton molested her and also didn't make an allegation that Trump was involved in the.
My first trip to the Palm Beach residence, I drove there from the airport with Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey and Ghislaine were always very boastful about their friends, their famous or powerful friends, and his biggest brag forever was that he was very good friends with Donald Trump. He had an 8x10 framed picture of him on his desk with the two of them. They were very close.
Now, okay, I mean, that yes, we knew that already. I mean, there's literally a picture of Bill Clinton in a dress in Jeffrey Epstein's house. So yeah, we knew all. Again, what is the breaking news? What is the thing that requires massive explication and attention? If there's something new, let's do this thing. Seriously. The survivors also appeared on NBC News, where they admitted that they didn't actually see Trump ever do anything bad, which again, I think was the entire implication, particularly from Democrats, is the reason that Trump isn't doing more Epstein talk is because there's something deep and dark and terrible inside the Epstein files about Trump personally, but no one has yet made that actual allegation.
I do have to ask, and I know, and it's just something that I think we're compelled to at this moment, with the attention on President Trump, with these questions around a pardon, did anybody see or hear of the president himself doing anything inappropriate as it related to Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
Okay, so, I mean, so what's the allegation? Well, one Epstein survivor says, so where's the cover-up? Why is there a cover-up?
So I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up? Who are we covering for? Okay, so, I mean, if the allegation is that there is a cover-up and you are the victims, shouldn't you unmask it? Truly, you have 27 victims stacked up right there. Shouldn't they unmask it? Well, these were questions that Michael Tracy was asking. He showed up to report on the situation, and he asked some pretty basic questions, particularly with regard to Virginia Giuffre and Alan Dershowitz, and he was immediately basically ejected by the people who were standing there for asking these basic questions.
Yep. Yeah, so you represented Virginia Roberts for quite a few years. She eventually had to recant the allegations that she made against Alan Dershowitz. She alleged that...
We're not talking. All right, next question. Next question. Thank you.
Who's next? Why is it that she should be...
Yeah, no, we're not answering your question. Anybody else?
Go ahead.
How did the victims feel about the interview that was given to Ghislaine Maxwell?
There's a woman trying to say something. That's better.
Okay,
ma'am, I think that you had a question.
Okay, so just completely ignore a very, very basic question. So you're literally standing in front of a sign that says Epstein Files Transparency Act, and you won't answer an incredibly basic question. It doesn't speak to a desire for a ton of transparency, to be honest. Michael Tracy also was outside this event, and he confronted conspiracy theorist extraordinaire Ian Carroll, and said, "Well, you keep claiming a conspiracy. Can you detail what exactly it's supposed to be? Where's your evidence on any of this?"
Actual blackmail information about to break on RFK Jr. I personally despise RFK Jr. I'm the last one to run away from anything that could possibly be critiqued about RFK Jr. He's one of my least favorite people probably on earth. However, you know what I wouldn't do? Well, you know what I wouldn't do? I wouldn't make up fake blackmail stories about him, dump it out on social media, and then just ghost everyone when the story that I claim was imminent doesn't come out. But you think that's fine? I mean, that's your whole journalistic. I mean, you consider yourself a journalist?
Well, when you construe it in your way that misrepresents
construe it in the right way. Construe it in the correct way, please.
If someone wants to see how it's construed, they can go back and watch it. I have no problem with the way it was reported.
I unfortunately was subjected myself to watching it.
I'm actually quite proud of the way it was reported, and I got
nothing was reported. Where's the blackmail story? Where is it?
Again, the hallmark of a true conspiracy to be uncovered is evidence. These are the exact people who theoretically should be providing the evidence. That's the part that's strange about this entire presentation. You're literally bringing forth the victims who said that they were arrested by prominent people, and you named 0 people in this particular presser. And it doesn't seem like there are plans to reveal who these particular people are in any legally actionable way. Well, Thomas Massie, of course, trying to make political hay while the sun shines. He is claiming that Trump is covering up for his friends. We went from Trump is covering for himself to Trump is covering for his friends. We don't know who those friends are, these unspecified friends.
How about this? This is the flight logs. They're withholding who was on these planes. This is a document that's publicly available. Go find it on their website. They are redacting things to prevent embarrassment. They're not redacting things to protect victims. And in the process of preventing embarrassment, they're hiding some criminals.
Embarrassment to the president.
No, embarrassment to rich and powerful individuals who are connected to the president. I don't think the president is redacted here. I don't think he's implicated in these files, but I think his donors are. I think his friends are. And I think our own DOJ and government are implicated in this, too.
So, in other words, he believes that there are a bunch of criminals that the president is covering up for because they gave him money. That's the accusation from Thomas Massie. I'd love to see the evidence to actually substantiate that allegation. Meanwhile, Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, former recipient of the Billy Madison "You've Just Said the Stupidest Thing Anyone's Ever Heard" award here on the Ben Shapiro Show. Here she was encouraging President Trump to host Epstein and survivors in the Oval Office. Again, this is all just attention-grabbing behavior. That's all it is from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I look forward to talking with President Trump about these women that I've met. I also encouraged him already this morning that he should have these women in the Oval Office. They deserve to be there.
You spoke to him?
Yes, I did. Yeah. And I told him I'd be happy to set that up, arranging with their attorney by sharing his phone number.
What was his reaction to that?
I haven't gotten an answer back on that.
Okay, so I have a question. Why is Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically focusing in on this? Well, what is the injustice that she is seeking apparently to right? It's an allegation about a conspiracy that has yet to be substantiated. When the evidence is offered, then we can all hear it. And what I keep coming back to is you are literally standing next to the alleged victims. They should be able to tell you the names of the people who abused them. Even if those names are redacted, they should be able to tell you the names of the people who abused them. This is, of course, of great irritation to President Trump, who says that basically this is being kept alive at this point by a left-wing media that seeks to do him damage. I think a lot of that is true.
Right now, there have been survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill. They're calling for these case files, these documents to be released. And Thomas Massie, who is sponsoring a discharge petition to get the House to vote on releasing those documents, says he doesn't believe you're implicated in these files, but many of your friends and donors may be, and he says that's why the Justice Department is redacting them and slow-walking the release. Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir?
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. but it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
Hey, again, he's not wrong about this. He's not. I know that's unpopular in certain quarters. But if the idea is that the president is involved in a cover-up, at least points to Massey for saying it. A lot of people implying it. At least Massey will say it. Although, again, I think there's a fair bit of grandstanding. Meanwhile, the president of the United States may be actually shifting his focus when it comes to crime away from Chicago and actually toward New Orleans. Apparently, according to NBC News, President Trump is now suggesting that he might send troops to New Orleans in another crime crackdown. Now, I would assume that the reason that he's going to do that is because not only does New Orleans have very high rates of crime, but also that is, in fact, a red state. So he could theoretically just call on the red state governor to allow him to utilize the National Guard. Right? He could do that. Right? So far, he's been working in areas where the governor does not want to work in coordination with him and the National Guard, like California. In Washington, D.C., he didn't have to ask for permission because Washington, D.C. is a federal territory. When it comes to Louisiana, Louisiana's governor is, in fact, a Republican. So it could be a fascinating exercise and certainly a lot more legally based than sort of having national law enforcement without the state government involvement enforcing local or state law, which is a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. President Trump said that they may be going to Louisiana or New Orleans. He said, we'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks easier than Washington, D.C. Frankly, I think this is smart. I think this is smart for a variety of reasons. One, it gets past the narrative the Democrats are trying to retail that Trump is only targeting blue states. Well, Louisiana is a very red state, actually. So if he targets a blue city in a red state, which is where the crime typically is in red states, then that seems like that's a pretty smart political move. In fact, that's exactly what Trump said. Trump said about Governor Jeff Landry, Republican, that he, quote, wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of the country that's become quite tough, quite bad. Landry shared a clip of Trump's comments and welcomed the move. He said, we'll take President Trump's help from New Orleans to Shreveport. In a joint statement, New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell and the New Orleans PD touted the city's ongoing collaboration with the federal government. They said, we have consistently worked with our federal partners, including collaborations with the Louisiana State Police. This is quite brilliant politically. It really is, because what it's doing is it's wrong-footing Democrats again. Because now the question becomes, why aren't you just to act if the National Guard is an additional resource that could be used by states in order to lower murder rates in places like New Orleans or Shreveport, and Republican governors are fine with it, what are you complaining about? Why don't you work with the President of the United States? Why don't you just do that? Like, if it makes life better for your citizens and that resource is being offered, sure, you could say no. And sure, you could force the president to come up with some sort of jerry-rigged federal excuse to go in. Or you could, just lower the crime rates by saying yes. Naturally, there are, in fact, Democrats in New Orleans who are upset. That includes New Orleans City Council President J.P. Morrill, who said it's ridiculous to consider sending the National Guard into another American city that hasn't asked for it. Guardsmen are not trained law enforcement. They can't solve crime. They can't interview witnesses. They aren't trained to constitutionally police. Okay, but you know what they do is they stand there. And you know what people don't like to do is commit crimes in front of members of the National Guard. They don't like to do that so much. It turns out that boots on the ground are actually a really, really good way of cracking down on crime, as we've seen in Washington, D.C. So, again, I think this is a very smart plan by President Trump. Focusing in on Louisiana is smart. It totally wrongfoots Democrats. And it gives President Trump the capacity to say what he said yesterday, that Democrats are apparently against the prevention of crime.
This is the best issue of all. They are against preventing crime. They are fighting us. I want to go into Chicago, and I have this incompetent governor that doesn't want us. Do you know that this weekend 72 people were shot in Chicago? I'm embarrassed to say it in front of the president of Poland. 11 people were killed. 72 people were shot. Last week, 7 people were killed in Chicago. A place which is probably your number one place. I hate to say it.
Yeah, I love the polls.
And we got to keep it safe. But 7 people were killed. The week before that, 5 people were killed, and 21 people were shot. This is in 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, I lost almost 35 people were killed. It could have been stopped. If you look at Washington, D.C., 3 weeks ago, it was the same or worse. And now it's considered a totally safe zone.
So, again, this is a smart move, and Democrats keep wrong-footing themselves. Here, for example, is the Illinois lieutenant governor saying that Trump doesn't care about law and order, which is weird since he's now doing the thing you said he wouldn't. He's going into a red state to do it.
Donald Trump will want to come in and say, well, I need to get in there and get things in order. Donald Trump doesn't care about public safety. He doesn't care about law and order. This is a president who wants to cause chaos. And what we are telling people is you need to make sure that as you exercise your First Amendment rights, which you should, that you do so in a way that you are safe and that we will do everything that we can as your leaders to protect our people.
So, good luck with this argument, seriously. But this is what Democrats are going to try, I suppose. Democrats are making a lot of dumb moves these days. The president is trying to make things better in New York by basically clearing a path for Andrew Cuomo to be the sole candidate to run against Zohran Mamdani. According to Politico, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been reluctant to abandon his bid for re-election, but President Trump might offer him an instrumental post. And it might make it easier to stop Mamdani from winning in New York if that were to happen. Right now, the polls show Mamdani stuck in the low to mid-40s. The rest of the field is consolidated, or has failed to consolidate, and is thus split, leading to Mamdani's potential victory. Apparently, Adams would be offered a position at HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. A White House official would neither confirm nor deny that that is precisely what was happening. There's also been some talk about Curtis Sliwa being offered some sort of position to get them out of the race and leave Andrew Cuomo as the sole remaining candidate to run against Zohran Mamdani. This led Mamdani to then post, quote, today's news confirms that Cuomo is Trump's choice for mayor. The White House is considering jobs for Adams and Sliwa to clear the field. New Yorkers are sick of corrupt politics and backroom deals no matter who's running. We'll deliver a better future on November 4th. Here was Mamdani saying this.
Andrew Cuomo is Donald Trump's choice to be the next mayor of this city. This is, however, about an affront to our democracy. An affront to what makes so many of us proud to be Americans. That we choose our own leaders. Not that they get to pick themselves. Not that they get to be picked by the President of the United States. If I was worried about polling, I wouldn't be the Democratic nominee.
Okay, so here's the thing. It's not about Trump loving Andrew Cuomo. He does not love Andrew Cuomo by any stretch of the imagination. He just thinks that you're garbage because you are, Zohran Mamdani, because you're terrible. And offering a one-on-one alternative is not, in fact, anti-democratic. I'd love to see Zohran Mamdani make this case to the Democratic Party, which consolidated around, say, Joe Biden to stop Bernie Sanders. Maybe he would, but he'd be wrong. So that race may be about to get very, very interesting indeed. Alrighty, coming up for our members right now on the show, we'll get to the latest on the economy. Is a stagnation in the works? Why are we seeing better earnings? And is that an indicator that the economy is doing well? What's the story? Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us. My friend Charlie Kirk yesterday was gunned down in cold blood, dead at the age of 31. And, it's incredibly difficult to broadcast on days like this, to talk about this. We talked about it yesterday live as the aftermath was happening. It's truly horrifying in every possible way for it to be horrifying. It's horrifying for the country. It's horrifying for people who knew Charlie. It's horrifying mostly for his family. And of course, there's nothing to say about the horror for Charlie himself. Charlie was a religious person, which means that he's with the Lord now. He's with God right now. But for the rest of us who have to deal with the fallout and who have to witness the pain left behind, it is truly horrific. I'm going to read you what I wrote on Twitter yesterday about Charlie. I wrote, like all of you, I'm utterly stunned and heartbroken and sick to my soul today. It's unimaginable to write these words. I met Charlie Kirk when he was 18 years old, a young man so eager and determined. I immediately turned to a friend and said that kid is going to be the head of the RNC one day. Charlie became even bigger and more important than that. It was a privilege to watch this principled man stand up for his beliefs and create the single most important conservative political organization in America. But more importantly, Charlie was a good man, a man who believed in right and wrong, who stood by his biblical values. All of us will miss him. I can't imagine the pain of his beautiful young family. We must all pray for them. We must pick up the baton where Charlie left it, fighting for the things he believed in so passionately. And we must fight for a better America, an America where good people can speak truth and debate passionately without fear of a bullet. I weep for Charlie's family, and I weep for my country today. Most of all, I weep for Charlie. The horror of the videos, which we are not going to show because Charlie should never be remembered the way that his killer would like for him to be remembered, as a victim of a bullet. He should be remembered as fully alive as he was. I'm not sure I've ever known a more energetic human being than Charlie Kirk. As I say in that post, I met Charlie when he was 18 years old. I was working at the David Horowitz Freedom Center at the time. I was 28, Charlie was 18, and he was walking around meeting with donors, trying to gin up support for an organization, a little organization called Turning Point. And I remember, as I say, turning to Jeremy Boring and saying to Jeremy, that kid's going to be the head of the RNC, because Charlie's energy was infectious. And one of the things that I saw in Charlie that was really amazing is how much better he got at things over time. When you watch somebody progress from an 18-year-old high school graduate, never went to college, to become one of the most important political figures in America, the creator of the most important political organization by all rights in the country, you get to watch somebody develop. And I watched as Charlie got better at everything. He was an autodidact. He is somebody who taught himself how to become a great speaker. I'm not sure that Charlie was naturally a great speaker. He became a great speaker. I'm not sure that Charlie was naturally an amazing debater. He became an amazing debater. Charlie was always very good at fundraising. He became the best fundraiser literally in the country. He went from an activist to an activist leader, somebody who inspired literally millions of people across the country. There are legitimately tens of millions of young people today who are in mourning because they feel like they knew Charlie or they did know Charlie. One of the amazing things about Charlie as a human is because Charlie was so energetic, because he was so garrulous and outgoing, everyone I know was friends with Charlie. That doesn't mean we were all close friends with Charlie. Again, I knew Charlie for 13 years, and obviously he had his close circle of friends, and you would never want to put yourself, in that category unless you actually were. But Charlie was friendly with everyone. He was energetic with everyone. There's not a person who interacted with Charlie who came away not liking Charlie as a human being. His energy was so infectious. It was exhausting at times. And more than that, he just never stopped. And he never stopped because he cared deeply about the country. He cared deeply about the fundamental principles of the country. And he tried to enact that in his daily life every single day. That's why he was on a college campus in Utah when he was shot to death at 12:10 p.m. Utah time yesterday. He was doing the thing that made him famous. He was talking to people who disagreed. Charlie did a thing that I think is wonderful. He would always tell people who disagree to go to the front of the line so that he could have conversations and discussions. This is the video of Charlie just a few minutes before he was shot. You can see the joy at this event. There were 3,000 people in this outdoor space. He's throwing hats to them. Everybody's excited to be there. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's having a great time. Charlie built this organization ground up. His seminal figure in the American conservative movement, in the Trump MAGA movement, for sure. And it was shortly thereafter that he was sitting there. He was asked a question about trans shooters. And as he picked up the microphone to answer, he was shot in the neck. It's pretty clear. Again, we're not going to show the video here because nobody should watch the video. It is horrifying in the extreme. And it is, I think, an element of our infectiously evil social media apparatus that people watch this, they become inured to it, they glorify it. We'll get to that in a little bit on the show. Something terrible is happening in the country. Truly terrible is happening in the country. A wave of violence, a true wave of violence. We've seen it before. We've seen it happen in the 60s and in the 70s. And honestly, I didn't think that we were here. We've obviously seen violence. We've seen the congressional baseball shooting. We've seen twice people attempt to assassinate President Trump. We've seen the murder of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C. We've seen the murder of the United Healthcare CEO on the streets of New York, celebrated by people over in the blue sky left. But I didn't think we were here. And one of the things that I've been grappling with, obviously, on a sort of personal level, aside from knowing Charlie and believing that Charlie was a wonderful human being, is the fact that for 10 years, more than that, I went to college campuses, did the same thing that Charlie did. And I always said to my wife and to people around me, they would say, well, is it safe? And I'd say, of course it's safe. This is America. And sure, security would tell you to put on a bulletproof vest, but do you need a bulletproof vest to speak freely in America? Do you need hundreds of... I always thought it was overkill. I do not think it's overkill anymore. I think that we've entered into a new world a world where huge percentages of the American public, by the polling, are okay with violence against one another based on speech, where excuses are made, permission structures are created for murder because you disagree with the political position of another human being. I'm not sure how we get back, except by appeal to the exact values that Charlie stood for. Open debate, normal discussion. The thing about all the videos of Charlie, he's unfailingly polite in these videos to people. When he is having these discussions, he is polite. He was having polite, normal conversations with people who disagreed on these college campuses. And for that, he was murdered. For that, he was shot down at the age of 31 with a young wife and 2 extremely young kids. He has a daughter aged 3 and a son aged 1. President Trump announced Charlie's death yesterday. I mean, this is one of those moments in American history where, especially if you knew Charlie, but even if you didn't, you're going to remember where you were when you found out that Charlie Kirk had been murdered by a gunman. I was at lunch with somebody, and I mean, it stopped us cold. There's nothing to be said. It's honestly, as a human being, I'm very rarely at a loss for words. I'm at a loss for words now. President Trump put out a statement. The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he's no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. It's unthinkable. It's truly unthinkable. 31 years old. And what he accomplished in his 31 precious years of life on this planet, unmatched by virtually anyone in the history of modern American politics, as we will get to as we pay tribute to Charlie today. President Trump announced that the American flag would be lowered across the country at all federal properties to half-mast until Sunday evening at 6 p.m. The White House flag last night was lowered in honor of Charlie Kirk. It is unthinkable to talk about Charlie in the past tense. It truly is. President Trump last night made a statement from the Oval Office, which we will play in its entirety. Here is the President of the United States talking about the murder. It wasn't just the death, it's just a tragic death. It was an overt act of assassination against Charlie Kirk, directed at the mechanisms of free speech in America. That's what this was. And Charlie is, by all rights, a free speech martyr. He literally was killed for having discussions with people who disagreed with him. He was murdered for that. He was murdered for doing the thing that makes America unbelievable and different from virtually every other country on earth, for having the discussions that allow us to achieve some semblance of truth, that allow us to conduct ourselves as fellow citizens. And for that, he was shot in the neck and murdered in legitimately the prime of his life. Here's the President of the United States last night.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven. Our prayers are with his wife, Erica, the 2 young, beloved children, and his entire family, who he loved more than anything in the world. We ask God to watch over them in this terrible hour of heartache and pain. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God. Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country. An assassin tried to silence him with a bullet, but he failed, because together we will ensure that his voice, his message, and his legacy will live on for countless generations to come. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory, may God watch over his family, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
And we'll get to the ideology of the alleged shooter in a moment. The shooter at this moment has not yet been found, but we do have some evidence on that. President Trump has announced that he will posthumously award Charlie the Presidential Medal of Freedom, an award that Charlie should have earned 5 decades from now, after maybe being president himself. I mean, this is just, yeah. Here's the President of the United States.
Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd.
Just absolutely horrifying. I mean, well-deserved for Charlie Kirk, that Presidential Medal of Freedom. J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, who's very close with Charlie, put out a tweet as well in honor of Charlie, praising him for his emphasis on dialogue. The Vice President of the United States said, if you actually watch Charlie's events, as opposed to the fake summaries, they are one of the few places with open and honest dialogue between left and right, who would answer any question and talk to everyone, which of course is true. Yankee Stadium last night held a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk, which I thought was quite beautiful. Here's what it looked like at Yankee Stadium last night.
2 children is 31 years old.
Again, well-deserved. Meanwhile, the manhunt continues. Yesterday, Utah Governor Spencer Cox announced it was a political assassination, which, of course, you knew the moment that the bullet hit Charlie. The moment the shot was fired, of course, it was a political assassination. It was not just a murder. It was clearly politically oriented. Charlie Kirk was murdered. He was killed by a subhuman piece of debris for the great crime of speaking truth in debate. That is why he was killed. Here is Spencer Cox, the Utah governor.
This is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination.
Well, the Wall Street Journal is now reporting based on original reporting via Stephen Crowder. Stephen texted me this morning because Stephen and I go a long way back when it comes to campus events. Actually, it was an event at University of Utah back in, I believe, 2017, where Stephen and his team actually infiltrated the Antifa crowd and found weapons among them. There were 300 protesters outside that particular event. There were several arrests made at that event. Stephen reminded me this morning that he actually found an Antifa protester who had brought a sawed-off shotgun. This has been a serious problem for a while. Again, for those of us who do this sort of thing on the regular, you tell yourself that this can't happen in America. This is not a thing that happens in America. You don't get shot for saying things in America. That's not in America. It's the essence of anti-Americanism, the essence of it. Apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal, investigators found ammunition engraved with expressions of transgender and anti-fascist ideology inside the rifle that authorities believe was used in the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. That was first reported again by Stephen, who deserves the credit for the breaking news. He had gotten a piece of leaked information from the ATF. The older model 30 caliber hunting rifle, which by expert testimony is essentially what people thought it was because it didn't sound like an AR, was discovered in the woods near the scene of Wednesday's shooting at Utah Valley University, wrapped in a towel with the spent cartridge still in the chamber. There are also 3 unspent rounds in the magazine, all with wording on them, which has become a traditional mode of communication for some of the world's worst human beings, is to engrave the cartridges of the bullets with political statements. Here is law enforcement announcing the finding of the rifle.
We have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled.
And again, the bullets were apparently engraved with transgender and Antifa writing. The violence that is growing upon our nation is enabled by a permission structure that says that your political opponents are not just your opponents, they are your enemies, that they are a threat to you personally, that their views are a threat to you personally. The ideology of the shooter, if this report is correct, rooted in the basic idea that has been promoted for literally a decade, that if you say a man is not a woman, that you are engaged in eliminationist erasure, a form of genocide, results in a permission structure for murder. That is what it does. In the same way that there has been a permission structure created by many on the left that suggests that healthcare CEOs ought to be shot on the streets of New York and that the shooter, Luigi Mangione, was some sort of righteous martyr against the capitalist system. In my book, I have a whole section about violence performed by what I call the scavengers, people who seek to tear down the person who shot Charlie Kirk, is the worst that humanity has to offer. The worst that somebody who wished to destroy the fundamental institutions of free speech, the fundamental basis of the country. That is what this person was. And the people who do this sort of thing, they do so because they believe that they are acting righteously. They believe that they are acting in order to destroy those who, in fact, are somehow after them. That is the way they excuse this. And anyone who makes excuses for this sort of stuff is making it significantly more common. One of the things that I write in the book is that the philosophy of the scavenger says your grievances are justified. You're the center around which the rest of the universe turns. If you suffer unjustly. If you suffer unjustly, that must be the result of systems designed purposefully by a cadre of others. The only way to fight the great conspiracy against you, say the scavengers, is to seize power. Once you have power, you can destroy the great conspiracy and free yourself and those who fight alongside you. All you require is power. And power requires violence. Violence is the corrective. The philosophy of the scavenger, I say, is a variety of phantom conspiracies the racialist conspiracy theory of a dominant white supremacist superstructure in the United States, or the Marxist conspiracy theory of an economic elite seeking to rig the economy to the detriment of the working class, or the transgressive conspiracy theory of a heteronormative society using its power to fascistically enforce traditional sexual mores, the international conspiracy theory of a settler colonialist West using its power to promote its ethnocentric ideology. Every conspiracy theory carries with it the implicit promise of violent opposition deemed morally praiseworthy by the conspiracists. And that's what this is. That's what this is. It is growing. It has been enabled. It has been massaged. It has been championed by major figures. And when you add in the sickness of social media, where people who are naturally predisposed to violence, people with dark triad personalities find each other and find common cause and pat each other on the back and boost each other up to do murder, you will get more murder. You will. The reaction to Charlie on social media in particular is a reminder of a sickness growing inside of our nation, a true sickness growing inside our nation. Blue Sky accounts were celebrating Charlie's death yesterday, celebrating it outright. Yesterday, when I was broadcasting live, I said I didn't want to bring that to you because it's fringe. But the truth is, that fringe is dangerous. And the broader permission structures that allow that fringe to grow and to marinate, that is making our country unlivable, truly unlivable. It is making it so that you cannot walk in public if you have a strong political point of view publicly expressed. It is making it so that people require 24/7 security for them and for their children. That Charlie Kirk, even with 6 security people, can still be murdered in cold blood in front of the entire world, and then snuff films of his murder passed around the internet like candy. Blue Sky is replete, not just with celebration today, but of people calling for more of this against anyone on the right that they deem to be part of the conspiracy theory against them. TikTokers yesterday were celebrating Charlie's death. I mean, here's what some of these TikTokers, the only reason to play this is just to show you a sickness growing, a cancer that is growing inside our nation. And it's not enough, as we're going to talk about in a minute, for Democrats or even Republicans to just say we need to lower it with the violent rhetoric. It's not just about that. It's about creating thought structures that give permission for murder. And here's what it looked like on TikTok yesterday. People celebrating. Thumbs up. Happy smiles. People cheering. And the only reason you do this is because you will receive plaudits for it. The only reason you do this is because you believe people will celebrate you for doing this, that you will get likes and clicks. And this is being exacerbated. Yes, it is being exacerbated by people who do the systematic algorithmic tweaking on TikTok and X and Blue Sky. Yes, it is. Facebook accounts were celebrating Charlie's death yesterday. On Telegram, people were celebrating Charlie's death yesterday. There is a sickness that is growing in our nation, a true sickness. And that sickness needs to be extirpated. It needs to be extirpated. I want to go more into that, but I want to draw back and I want to talk about my friend Charlie Kirk, because I think that truly, in order to understand what the world lost yesterday, you have to understand who Charlie was. And I've said this many times on the program before. In many ways, it is easier to be a great man than to be a good man. To be a great man very often just means you have an impact on the world, that you change people's lives, that you create structures that make the world a better place. To be a good man requires you to put yourself last and your family first, to believe in the promises of the Bible and its values, to believe that there is a good and there is a bad. And that's what Charlie was. Charlie was a good man. Charlie was a good man. And I think as he got older, Charlie focused more and more on being a good man. Again, he's a husband with 2 babies, 3, 1. As a father of 4 with very small children, I cannot even imagine. I cannot even imagine the feelings of Erica today, or the children that she will have to raise without their father there. And all the words that we tell ourselves about how Charlie died for something meaningful, which is obviously true, isn't going to replace him in their lives. It isn't going to fill that hole because nothing can. July 27th, 2025, Charlie tweeted, quote, "Get married, have kids, stop partying into oblivion, leave a legacy, be courageous. Happy Sunday. God bless all the parents out there." And I think that that's what, overall, that's really what Charlie was at the end of the day. Yes, obviously he's a public figure, a hugely important public figure, a transformative public figure, particularly for young people. Transformative in allowing them to open their minds about politics and consider things from a different point of view. But what he really was is this video of Charlie with his daughter on the Fox set, the Fox and Friends set. This is just a few weeks ago. His very small 3-year-old daughter running to daddy to give him a hug. Here's the footage. I have kids this age. I know what this is like to feel this. I know what it's like when you get home from speaking at a university or speaking in a very fraught place and hug your children. And the fact that Charlie won't be there to hug his children is a sin. It is a satanic act, truly satanic. Here is Charlie reflecting on his career with George Janko, which I think is, again, Charlie was a good man, and his goodness came out when he spoke.
You know what I would love? I would love to be a very popular radio host, podcast host, great father, great husband, and live a very happy life where I can run a major organization, influences the country, and I could pick up the phone, the president answers on the first ring. That would be awesome.
But I feel like you're doing that right now.
So maybe I'm living the life.
Yeah, let's go. Nice.
What Charlie will be known for through the clips for an entire generation of people is, of course, the exact debate that he was doing when he was struck down in cold blood by a murderer's bullet, debating issues that really matter. Here, for example, is Charlie debating some of these students at, again, one of his events, asking, talking about marriage and family. These, again, are traditional, normal, conservative values. And don't believe a media that tries to sell you soap about how Charlie was some sort of extremist. It wouldn't matter if he were. You don't get to murder people for having extreme views in the United States. That's not an American. But Charlie wasn't even that. Charlie was a mainstream, normie conservative who believed traditional American things about family and about liberty, about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And he said these things in public, and he debated these things openly. And for that, a murderer killed him. And that is a turning point for the United States. That is a turning point for the United States. We can turn it for good or we can turn it for ill. Here is the kind of thing that made Charlie Kirk famous. Here he was talking about marriage and family with a student in the audience.
If you want to have a privileged life in America, very simple. Start acting a certain way. Do not.
What do you mean act a certain way?
Get married to one person and stay married to that person and don't abandon them, of which 75% of black men do.
So, okay, we have 2 black men right here. By that statistics, one of us is not going to get married to one woman. So,
okay, I hope you guys defy the odds.
Okay, so
were you raised by a two-parent
yes,
household?
I was.
Okay, good, and that's why you are probably here, because that elevates my argument. Our belief system is that you come down to the most foundational family unit, and when that breaks down so severely, don't be shocked if that group, when it acts that way, stays in poverty over a longer period of time.
Again, it's this sort of thing that made Charlie a phenomenon. Charlie, again, I watched him over his career. He got so good at this. When he started off, he had kind of a strangely awkward persona, and he turned himself into an incredibly charismatic speaker, a terrific debater. Here he was debating college students about the trans issue, an issue that may very well have gotten him killed, speaking the truth about basic human nature. Basic, the most basic.
What is a woman?
That's a stupid question, dude. That's a dumb question.
It can't answer what a woman is. It's not a trick question. What is a woman?
Who identifies as a woman?
What is that thing? You can't answer the question with the question. Define woman without saying woman.
It's a social norm. Does it even matter?
What is a woman? This is not a trick question, everybody. You're in college paying for an education. What is a woman?
How about you talk to someone with media training?
You don't need media training. It's not a trick. What is a woman? You can't answer the question with the... It's like... What is a man? And the college kids of America going hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt who think it's a trick question when you ask them what a woman is.
The world lost something in Charlie, for sure. Here he was, debating students about abortion.
If you killed a baby, that's murder. But killing a fetus isn't murder.
What species is the fetus?
Human,
Then how is it not murder?
because it hasn't been born yet.
Why does that make it human?
Because that's when, like, it's not dependent on the mom, and it can be, like, its own thing.
If you have a pacemaker, you're dependent. If you have a ventilator, you're dependent. Babies are in NICU units, neonatal intensive care units, they're dependent. Dependency does not equal its degree of moral worth. And so I need to understand the moral consistency. Here is a baby at 31 weeks that can survive outside of the womb. It has its own brain waves, its own consciousness, its own heartbeat, its own ability to clean its bladder. How is that not a human being? It just happens to be in a mom.
Because it hasn't come out yet. It's still living in the mom. It's still part of the mom.
Right, but it's living. It has a heart. If it's not living, how does it have a heartbeat?
Because a fetus is like a parasite. It lives off the mom.
You think babies are parasites?
Fetuses.
Right, but a fetus literally is just a word for a human being. It's a stage of development.
Before it's born.
Right, but have you ever been to a fetus shower? Why do they call it a baby shower, not a fetus shower?
Well, yes, it's a baby, but it depends on what the mother wants.
Oh, so it is a baby, not a fetus. Got it.
Again, Charlie got really, really good at this. One of his best debates recently, he spoke at Oxford on DEI. He was terrific.
Even though America's Constitution explicitly forbids racial discrimination, our government ordered people to do it anyway. People were denied jobs and denied promotions. Kids were shut out of universities based on the color of their skin rather than their ability. Companies were denied federal contracts because their owners didn't look a certain way. People who didn't discriminate enough in hiring could be sued by the government. Every company in America lived in fear of their government deciding to target them for offenses against DEI. Trump has ordered DEI to be torn down, but I want him to tear it down faster. I want every university told that they're losing all federal dollars immediately if they don't stop racial discrimination. I want the Department of Justice to start auditing every federal contractor to find DEI and shut off contracts immediately wherever we find it. This is a kind of cancer that cannot be phased out. It must be ripped out from the core.
And of course, Charlie wasn't just an individual. He built an incredibly powerful organization. TPUSA, when it first started, might have had a budget of $1 million. I believe that they raised $130 million last year. One of the most powerful political organizations in America. Not just with these gigantic campus events. And they were gigantic. And I've spoken at a bunch of TPUSA events. You're talking about like stadium-filling events. Charlie could get out a crowd. His organization could get out a crowd like no one else in America. Here, for example, is a TPUSA event at Texas A&M. This is from April. Is this kind of crowd? Is this kind of thing from Charlie's TPUSA? Again, this is the organization that Charlie built from scratch. And of course, Charlie had a truly massive impact on election 2024 because he got young people out to vote, because he changed their minds. Young people went Republican, moved toward the Republican Party by double digits, particularly young men, but young women as well. One of the most moving videos of Charlie, and I remember he and I talked about this. Actually, we talked about it on air at the TPUSA event a few months ago. Was this video of Charlie getting emotional, hearing that Trump had won. This is on election night, which I think was, one of the highlights of Charlie's life for sure.
Fox News decides Donald Trump is president of the United States. We've got our republic back, folks.
Let's go. There it is.
Everybody should remember this moment. Look, I'm gonna echo Charlie from earlier. Remember where you were when this happened. Remember where you were when you realized that the Uniparty and all of these, just the establishment, you said it's time to actually participate, and look what you guys have done.
And if anyone deserves to get tears in his eyes, it's Charlie. I think we all agree.
I think Erica was chopping some onions or something in the break room.
No one has worked harder than Charlie for this.
We gotta hear some words here from you, Charlie. You put all this together, my man. Let's hear it.
I am just humbled by God. It's all God. It's all God. God alone. God alone. That's all. Decision desk has it. Pennsylvania. It's done. It's beginning.
Well, fairly recently, Charlie was asked how he wanted to be remembered. This is on the Iced Coffee Hour, and his answer is quite beautiful.
If everything completely goes away, how do you want to be remembered?
I mean, if I die?
Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith in my life.
Well, what went wrong here in America? I think Charlie summed it up well himself. There's a tweet, April 7th, 2025. And Charlie tweeted that there's an assassination culture that had emerged. What assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% said the same about Donald Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether losing an election or losing a court case, justifies a maximally violent response. This is the natural outgrowth of left-wing protest culture, tolerating violence and mayhem for years on end. The cowardice of local prosecutors and school officials have turned the left into a ticking time bomb. That is not wrong. That is not wrong. And again, one of my great irritations is when people use the third person plural without specifying who they're talking about and say they. They shot Charlie. A very specific person shot Charlie with a very specific ideology. An ideology enabled by a very specific permission structure, an ideological permission structure. And we need to trace all of that so that we can extirpate it. It is not enough to just say they. We need to say who they are. It was the shooter. It was the people who continue to claim that if you say basically true things about men and women, that you are a genocidal maniac. It is the people who say that if you agree with Donald Trump, then you are a Nazi. You turned up the temperature on this. It is not just a generic turn down the temperature thing. It's not enough to just say that. Everyone needs to look into their own heart and determine whether the things they say create the kind of structure where you end up defending murder or incentivizing murder or giving tacit permission to people who are unwell and who hook together on social media in networks of scavengers to go and do murder. The media response yesterday, large parts of it were predictably awful. MSNBC's Matt Dowd got himself fired for this particular take as all of this was developing yesterday.
But following up on what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
I mean, what an awful, awful take. He ended up losing his job for that, as well he should have. The basic idea that Charlie had it coming, that he deserved what happened to him because of the speech in which he engaged. That wouldn't even be true if Charlie were saying extreme things, but he is not, he never said anything remotely like that. Not only that, the media infrastructure, which gins up hatred against perfectly normal people, calling them Nazis, as the president said, treating their statements as forms of genocide, suggesting that people who disagree with you are a deadly threat. This is why, I'm seeing some folks on the right who are saying this about people, quote unquote, on the left in general. Before we label people deadly threats, we should be very careful about whom we label.
The left has not been careful about this. Many people on the left have not been careful about this at all. And they've incentivized what is a rising tide of violence that makes it nearly impossible to speak freely in the country. If Charlie Kirk can get shot, anyone can get shot for speaking their mind. That is where we are. That is why it is empty verbiage when I hear the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, blaming President Trump for a quote-unquote new era of political violence and selling us soft words about the supposed increase in political rhetoric.
And I think there are people who are fomenting it in this country. I think the president's rhetoric often foments it. We've seen the January 6th rioters who clearly, have tripped a new era of political violence.
Why don't you condemn the movements that you are creating and facilitating that actively say that people like Charlie Kirk are a deadly threat to them? Why do you not do that? Why do you not do that? And I will tell you, I do not see a reaction that is on the social media right that matches the reaction on the social media left to the news of Charlie Kirk's death. I just don't see it. When 2 Minneapolis politicians of the left were shot, it turns out by a patronage supporter of Tim Walz under disputed circumstances, I saw zero celebration from the online right. I've yet to see tremendous celebration of something similar from the online right. I'm not seeing it. If it's there, it ought to be condemned. But to pretend that this is sort of an even-handed problem would be to ignore the ideological underpinnings of violent conspiracism that lead to assassinations. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez did her usual routine. She blamed it on gun violence. The problem is not guns. The problem is evil people who believe they can use guns to kill people because they are engaging in free speech. AOC tweeted, "The scourge of gun violence and political violence must end. The shooting of Charlie Kirk is the latest incident of this chaos. It must stop. We cannot go down this road. There is no place for it in America. We wish for his recovery." That was, of course, before Charlie had died. The scourge of gun violence and political violence must end. Thank you for those absolutely meaningless words. Truly meaningless. Yesterday, controversy broke out on the floor of the House of Representatives. The Speaker of the House asked for a moment of silence for Charlie, which was given. Lauren Boebert then got up and asked for a prayer to be said aloud, and many Democrats objected because apparently if you're not going to do that for other victims of assassination, then you shouldn't do it for Charlie. Just ridiculous. Here we go.
The chair would ask that all members present in the chamber and those in the gallery please rise for a moment of prayer for Charlie Kirk and his family. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Colorado rise?
People shouting no. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Seriously, what the hell is wrong with you?
Let's, wait a minute. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order. We will join prayer right after
oh my
this,
gosh!
okay?
If you can't stop, I mean,
the chair lays.
Gavin Newsom, who had done an actual podcast with Charlie, put out a tweet condemning political violence. He said, "The attack on Charlie Kirk is disgusting, violent, and reprehensible. In the United States of America, we must reject political violence in every form." Again, that's all very nice. What I want is a rejection of the movements that create incentive structures that openly call for political violence, that openly create the permission structure to do violence. Not every political point of view does that. Not every political movement does that. Disagreeing on tax structures does not create the incentive structure for political violence. Saying that if I say that a man is not a woman,
that I am erasing you as a human being and threatening your very existence, or engaging in a transgenocide or erasure or whatever the hell you want to call it, and that speech is violence, and therefore violence can meet speech. That is a permission structure. And if you back that, you are backing the permission structure for assassination. That is what you are doing. This is why I'm going to take it under advisement when Zoran Mamdani, who has created so many permission structures for various types of violence, it is beyond reckoning. I don't believe you. When Zoran Mamdani says, I'm horrified by the shooting of Charlie Kirk at a college event in Utah, political violence has no place in our country. I don't believe you believe that. And the reason I don't believe you believe that is because you are perfectly willing to make excuses for people who do violence depending on the cause that they are pursuing. The same person who is fine with globalize the intifada, literally a call for violence, is now saying that political violence has no... I don't believe you. I think you are just saying the words. The FBI in Salt Lake City has released a picture of a person that they are looking for right now. They need your help. That is why I'm showing this picture. They say, we are asking for the public's help identifying this person of interest in connection with the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University, 1-800-CALL-FBI. The picture appears to be of a young white male wearing sunglasses, a black hat, dark jeans, and a black hoodie that appears to be emblazoned with the picture of President Trump shaking his fist after the assassination attempt, or alternatively, that maybe it's a little vague, hard to see, could be an American eagle in front of an American flag. A little bit difficult to see. Obviously, the goal, if this is indeed the shooter, the goal of that person would be to blend in with the crowd. Apparently, the shooter in this particular case had specced out the terrain, had plotted an escape point. That is why the person is not in custody as of yet. That is, this person will be found, this person will be tried, this person will be executed, as well they should. As well they should. I just want to go back to my friend Charlie for a moment. Charlie was, again, a good man. I knew Charlie. I watched Charlie grow from a boy into a man. I watched that happen. I watched him go from 18 to 31. We were all privileged to know Charlie, to watch Charlie work, to watch him build. He was a builder. He was a lion of a human being. He was engaged in the hardest business, which is the pragmatic growth of coalitional politics. That is super difficult. It really is. And people aren't going to agree with every decision that's made along the way or every view expressed. What they are going to remember Charlie for, the thing that people will build statues to Charlie for, and they should, is the thing that he died doing. Expressing truth in public places through open and honest debate with people who disagree. That is the thing they're going to build statues of Charlie Kirk for, and they should. And it's unbelievable we have to talk about Charlie using the past tense. It's unbelievable and horrifying in every possible way. Yesterday on the show, it's later in the day, so for those who didn't have a chance to listen, I read Psalm 23 for Charlie. I want to do that again here. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As I said yesterday, Charlie will be dwelling in the house of the Lord forever. He was a good man. He was a good man who leaves behind a beautiful family. And when people that you know enter the pages of history, which is what Charlie will do, he'll go down as one of the most transformative political figures in American history, Charlie Kirk. When a person that you know is a full human being with all of the wonderful things about them and all the flaws becomes a part of history, something happens. And that is the brightest part of them shines through everything else. And that's what you're seeing today. The brightest part of Charlie, the part of him that was about faith and family and community and biblical values and God and country and American patriotism, And yes, free speech and debate and discussion and the vibrant, bustling democracy that America is, and that Charlie spent his entire life, literally his entire life, from the time he was young, fighting for, all that shines through. And every time you see a picture of Charlie, you can see it in his face, the joy with which he engaged the world, the willingness to go to battle on behalf of the country, the willingness to say things, the willingness to go to places where people disagreed. He was what made America great and will continue to make America great going forward, because we're going to have to pick up that baton. There's a prayer that we do at Jewish funerals that I want to read as well. It's called Kel Malei Rachamim. I'm not going to read it in Hebrew. It says, O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness on the heavens, unto the soul of Charlie, the son of Robert, who has gone unto eternity, and in whose memory charity is offered. May his repose be in paradise. May the Lord of mercy bring him under the cover of his wings forever. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May the Lord be his possession, and may he rest in peace. Amen. Now, it's still up to us. I saw a lot of rumors online today. I was made aware of this by my team, that I canceled some sort of college tour. That's bullshit. I saw those rumors. They are false. I will be coming to college campuses, many of them this year. So will we all, I am sure, because we're Americans and we're not going to be deterred. Charlie's voice is not silent. We're going to pick up that blood-stained microphone where Charlie left it. And to those who would intimidate, who would seek to stop us, who would seek to end free discussion, who believe that they have ownership over public spaces and can violently threaten and kill people who speak freely, we are not going to stop. And I have two words: fuck you. We will not stop telling the truth. We will never stop telling the truth. We will never stop debating and discussing. We will never stop standing up for what America is and for what she should be. And we will never let Charlie Kirk's voice die. Goodbye to my friend, Charlie Kirk. May your memory be a blessing for your family and for your country and for all of us.